What's good, friends list, episode 85 of the Gamecast coming at you. Through its rollercoaster development, Halo Infinite still remains Microsoft's headline title for the first year of the Xbox Series X's life, and beyond, with its supposed 10-year plan. But it doesn't sound like that's the only thing coming from the Halo universe. So, this week, we examine the new reports surrounding the second Halo project we previously reported on that developer 343 Industries has in the pipeline. Does a new Halo War seem to fit the bill after its rumored existence last year? What does the bandwidth of the franchise look like for the genres it can support given its current state in the zeitgeist of gaming? We dig around and try to make sense of it all. Plus, CD Projekt Red seems to have been the victim of a recent ransomware attack, which saw the selling of some of its franchise's source codes, including The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. What end goal comes with paying the rumored hefty $7 million price tag for source codes of already backed up titles outside of cheats? Also, Microsoft has announced the creation of a new subsidiary to coincide with their acquisition of ZeniMax and Bethesda, called simply Vault. What does this mean for the state of the IP and their future? Not to mention the ever-evolving discourse surrounding their exclusivity. All of this and much more on the newest jam-packed episode of the Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz I ask you to do every week. Wherever you get a podcast at, follow us on there. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways as always. I'm your host, as always, too, Travis White, aka Travis, on most internet platforms. Joining me, my co-pilot, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And, you know, normally, I try to find some interesting question, but I'll be honest, I was running around like fucking crazy today, trying to make our record time, getting stuff done at work, working from home, yada, yada. So I'm just going to keep it simple. What have you been playing? What's good? What's going on? What have you been playing? Going back to the well on that one, but what have you been playing, man?
Me, I've just been playing, we've been playing a little bit of the new patch on Call of Duty, Cold War, the new zombies patch, just kind of enjoying some of that.
Really digging that map. That map.
Just genuinely just been enjoying the zombies on that. I feel like they really made some good changes and updated it at the right time with the right kind of tweaks to really make zombies like a fresh experience, if you will. Also, notable thing that I've been playing besides Phasmophobia here and there, CS:GO. I've been playing a lot of Halo still because there are tournaments going on for that, so I've been enjoying that a lot. But outside of that, I have been actually delving into a little bit of Fallout New Vegas again, just trying to get a playthrough done of that. So overall, just been mixing it up, quite a significant amount, enjoying it, having fun, doing my thing, playing those different games. So, I've actually been playing some fresh titles, if you will. There's still a lot that I want to play, but I have a lot on my docket with work and trying to do some other stuff here at the new house that I just moved into. So yeah, just been having fun.
Yeah, definitely. No, and that's you sound like me a couple weeks ago where it's trying to focus in on something I wanted to play and having my hand in a bunch of different cookie jars, which is good. And I like doing that sometimes compared to being completely drawn into one game. But
Yeah, like I'm ultimately still trying to find something that's more of a casual game for me because I mean, I fire up CS and I want to be the best player that I can be at CS. Like I want to try to be the best in the world, even though I know it's not realistic.
Right.
I play Halo. It's the same thing. I play Apex. I want to win every game. Like there's still a lot of games like that. Age of Empires is the same. Like I still want to be the best that I can be. And I'm finding a super, like, I'm having a super hard time finding a game to just kind of casually enjoy. So I'm like eagerly awaiting, which Phasmophobia was that for me for a while. But I'm eagerly awaiting like the Diablo 2 remake and stuff like that, because those are games that I can genuinely just kind of hang out, have a good time. And like, I'm still going to take it serious as far as like grinding for gear, but at least I'm not like competing against other people constantly. And like that kind of can suck the fun out of it for me.
No, it definitely. And kind of that's how I was, like I was saying, like a couple weeks ago. And now I've kind of found, you know, a rhythm with a few things I've been playing, but yeah, I mean, it's finding that, like, for me on my end, I guess I'll just kind of go into mine because it kind of it ties in with that. Like, for right now, like, I've been the past week really like hooked into Dark Souls, like finally having like a Souls game click for me, and it kind of did earlier. Like Sekiro clicked for me for what I played of it. What was the other one? Bloodborne a little bit, but I haven't really committed to it. I've always had a problem with committing to Souls-like games, and for me, it was just taking that jump, committing it, learning, and actually investing time into learning how the game plays. You know, because it's true what people say, these games, that, you know, it's not that they're I guess you could say difficult, but they're not difficult in the sense of like, sure, some things can be cheap. Like, there's times, like, for people who are, you know, Souls veterans, I'm sure you know, like, Sif, the huge giant wolf that you fight. Like, he was giving me trouble for, like, 2 nights. Like, for some reason, I just couldn't fucking beat him. Quaylog, like, I beat the first fucking time with ease. But
Quahog?
Yeah, Quahog. Like, her, totally easy. Took her down 1 try, nothing to it. But then there's, you know, battles like, or bosses like Sif that like aren't directly tied, from my understanding, to the main he's kind of like a side boss in a way, or at least from my understanding. Now that may change because I'm only like halfway through the game, but like, you know, it's bosses like that like I wasn't necessarily like planning to play, but now I am, but are giving me the most trouble. But like, I digress. It's the fact that like that has turned into my like hardcore game in terms of like, I'm sitting there, I'm looking up builds, I'm looking up strategies, things like that. I'm actually putting in the time to learn this, you know, the past like week, you know, 20 plus 30 hours in, you know, looking at finding ways to get better at that game by learning and actually sitting down, committing to what the game actually is. And like, it's nice to have those games that are the, you know, hey, I can kind of turn my brain off. Like, even for us, it can kind of get high stakes, but like playing zombies, it's great to just turn my brain off. And like, you know, it's shooting zombies. Yeah, it's, you know, there's some coordination that comes into it, you know, whenever we're talking a group of 3, you, Adam, myself, like that's a little different. But, you know, just in general, though, it's easy to just go in, turn my brain off, and enjoy that game. Same with like my fiance and I. We're playing through Resident Evil 7 because for some reason, in the multiple playthroughs I've done of that game, she's never seen the whole thing. So she's like, I want to play through that before we play Resident Evil 8 later this year. Cool, definitely. So jump in, play that. It's another one that it's just easy to turn off my brain and play that. Like, sure, there's some strats that go into certain bosses and whatnot, but the Resident Evil games are very straightforward for the most part in terms of how you assess things. It's, you know, ammo management, resource management, making sure you have certain inventory space because you're going to pick up certain things along the way. And as you play these games, you get routes down to learn how to do that. But once again, it's a game that you kind of turn your brain off, where like, I need that digestive state between like sessions with Dark Souls Remastered. That is, that it's like, I need that, like, Soulsborne games get so intense and get so deep within the minutia of themselves that it's like, I need to walk away for a while, where it's like, one of the biggest gripes I have with Soulsborne games, and I promise I will end the show after this, but like one of the biggest gripes I have with not only really Soulsborne games, but games in general that turn me away so fast is the idea of like, oh, like, yeah, when you get to this certain point of this game, like, yeah, you're just going to have to farm. You're just going to have to grind. You're just going to have to get to that point. And I'm like, as a 28-year-old man now at this point who has like a full-time job, like, yeah, like, I'm lucky my fiance is into video games too and stuff like that like we can play video games together. We do stuff like that where, you know, I could use my free time to do that. But then again, my free time is limited still. Like, being a normal human being, your free time is going to be very limited, where it's like, yeah, I that just ruins the whole aspect of the game for me. That, you know, there's a pacing to these games that, you know, sure, if I want to just become OP, yeah, I could. There's certain areas I've learned where I need to farm, where, you know, right at the beginning, there's a certain area that you can get 550 souls each time and just run it, and you can do it for an hour and you'll get like, you know, 700,000 souls or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but like, that's an hour of my time that it's like, I'm not doing anything, and that's not productive. Right. That's not, and by productive, I mean like, it may be, you know, buffing my stats up, but it's like, it's just not like, it's not enjoyable. Like, and that's what turns me off. Like, I love the newest iteration of Assassin's Creed games. Like, I really do. I really love the RPG, you know, route that they're taking with these games, but nothing annoys me more than, oh, you got to stop and like, you know, oh, you're like 4 or 5 levels off. They're instantly going to kill you. Any enemies in this area are instantly going to kill you. So you got to grind. You got to do whatever. You got to do story missions or side missions. And, you know, luckily the past couple entries, their side missions have been overall pretty good. That make me want to go and actually complete side quests and learn about this world that I'm in and whatnot. But like, then again, that's like, as a player with these games, specifically RPG-esque games, like where you shouldn't be forced to explore the world or forced to do one thing. It should be natural. You should want to go and do these things, where it's like, you shouldn't put up these invisible barriers where there probably doesn't need to be one. You should encourage people to create those barriers for themselves to go and do that, where it's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep running into a brick wall for, you know, 4 hours, not getting past this one boss. It's like, just because I'm like, oh, I'm going the, you know, even if I'm going the critical path, it's like, I should be able to go the critical path. You should be able to play these games the way that you want to. And it just, it boggles my mind that it's like, okay, yeah, we love these games, but you got to farm, but you put up with them and yada yada. It's like, no, the whole premise of the game, it's like, you know, people say, oh, Cuphead's so hard. And I agree, Cuphead is a difficult game, but it's not cheap. It's well made, it's well crafted, and it's because you have to, it's like Souls, where you have to learn the actual, you know, minutia of the game and patterns that bosses have and whatnot. It's all achievable, and it's kind of like like you kind of talk about, Mike, with, you know, Ninja Gaiden, where it's like, you know exactly, the game will show you what exactly you did wrong. You have to adjust yourself. Like, you will know what you did to screw up and, you know, not defeat that boss the way you wanted to, or fail to that boss. Like, you're going to learn that. That's not difficult. It puts pressure on you as a player to learn to adapt to that. And it's not that difficult after that. It's actually paying attention to what you're doing in the game and not necessarily turn your mind off or whatever. It requires your attention. And that is good. That is a good required thing. It's not when it's like, hey, cool, you got to this point. Yeah, we don't want you to go there yet. We want you to go and, you know, you have to do this because we want you spending more time in our world doing this. It's like, no, you should want me to spend more time in this world because it's enjoyable and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, not putting up these invisible walls that, hey, cool, yeah, you're not going to be able to get past that until you go and have, you know, level 50 and you're level 45, and it takes like an hour to just get up a level at this point. It's like, but I am really, really enjoying Dark Souls Remastered. I'm looking forward to throwing a ton of time into it. It'll be my first Souls game that I do beat. And then after, I'm, you know, obviously this is Xbox podcast, but I'm thinking of doing either Bloodborne or Demon Souls, which Bloodborne may be next, because that's a little bit faster paced, from my understanding, which I did like about Sekiro, but eventually I'll get back to them, or I'll get to one of them, but gotta put on, Dark Souls is kind of my main game right now, so I'm hoping to, hey, maybe next week I come saying, hey, cool, I finished it. But then again, I also am having this itch to go back and finish. I never finished the 2 Half-Life episodes that are out there because I want to play eventually. One of my things this year is I would like to find a way to play Half-Life Alyx. So I'd like to finish those 2. I've finished 1 and 2, like Half-Life 1 and 2, but I never finished the actual episodes of them. So I'd like to go back and do that because I want to play Half-Life, but I digress. Hopefully I'm talking about Dark Souls again next week with how I beat it, but who the fuck knows? Mike, let's end the button mash for this week since we got a jam-packed episode. If you're new to the show, button mash, we'll run through our quick hit stuff before we get into our big topics for the week. Starting with Activision. Mike, I know this is going to take you by surprise, so I'd maybe sit down if, you're not prepared or whatever, but this may come as news to you. Activision has confirmed that there is a new Call of Duty game coming later this year. I know, everyone, pull the car over. We're talking, I would usually say my dad because my dad is a truck driver, but he just had major shoulder surgery late last year, so he is not working right now. But if you're a truck driver out there, Big 10-4, buddy, pull her on over. We'll honk the horn or whatnot. You may need to pull over and cope with what I'm telling you. Activision has confirmed there's a new Call of Duty game coming later this year. The news was revealed during Activision Blizzard's Q4 2020's earnings call, which was transcribed by The Motley Fool, in which Activision CFO Dennis Durkin talked through the company's plans for Call of Duty, which includes a, quote, strong premium release plan for Q4 in 2021. Given that Durkin also mentions migrating the existing COD community to that game, there seems no doubt that there is another full annual release for the series coming. 6 Days in Fallujah, a military FPS game based on a real Iraq war battle, has been resurrected by a new developer and publisher after being canceled by its original publisher, Konami, over a decade ago. Set for release on PC and console later this year, the new version of 6 Days in Fallujah is developed by Highwire Games, a studio founded by Halo's lead designer, and published by Victura. A tactical shooter, the game is based on events that took place in 2004 during the second battle for Fallujah in Iraq. For the first time since 2019, Telltale Games' Tales from the Borderland series is coming back to stores on February 17th. Borderlands series developer Gearbox announced the news this Wednesday on the official Borderlands Twitter account. Gearbox did not confirm which digital storefronts Tales would be returned to, but the game previously released on Steam. Borderlands 3 also ended up on both Steam and the Epic Games Store. Gearbox also hasn't provided any pricing information yet. Speaking of that, games coming to newer platforms, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, is making its way to the Xbox Series X and S and PC later this year, following its debut in 2020 on Xbox One. Activision and developer Toys for Bob have announced that Crash 4 will be released for PS5 as well, but both Xbox Series platforms, Nintendo Switch, and PC starting on March 12th. And PC will also be through Battle.net sometime later this year. The Series X version will run natively at 4K 60 frames per second, while the Series S version will run at 60 frames per second with an upscaled 4K. These next-gen versions will also include faster load times and 3D audio, and players who have already purchased It's About Time on PS4 or Xbox One can upgrade to their respective, if I can talk today, next-gen version at no cost, except for in Japan and the transfer over save data. 2020 was yet another record-setting year for Grand Theft Auto. Shocker. Grand Theft Auto, the game that fucking keeps coming, and GTA Online, according to publisher Take-Two Interactive's quarterly financial results. In an earnings briefing, Take-Two revealed that GTA has now sold over 140 million units to date. That's about 10 million units sold since May of last year. 140 million units. This game came out in 2013. It's still in top 10 sellings monthly on the Xbox Store, PSN, Steam. What the fuck? That's about 10, like I said, that's about 10 million units more than May of last year. Additionally, more units of GTA 5 were sold in calendar 2020 than in any other year except for the game's launch in 2013, when it sold 32.5 million copies. What the actual fuck? The Fate of Anthem. This is, I'll be quite honest, this is kind of fucked up. Whenever Jason Schreier reported about this earlier this week, but the Fate of Anthem supposedly hangs in the balance depending on how an internal review of the reboot goes. That's according to a new report which says that there is a chance EA expands the Anthem Next team or shelves the game altogether. In a new report from Bloomberg, EA executives will review the latest version of Anthem Next later this week. Depending on how the project is progressing, EA will continue to back and grow the Anthem Next team or, quote, abandon the project. Anthem Next was set to be a redo of sorts for Anthem, BioWare's live service action RPG, which quickly lost traction with players. BioWare handed Anthem to BioWare Austin, which specifically works on live projects like Star Wars: The Old Republic. So fingers crossed for the team down in BioWare Austin that hopefully everything goes well. Even if Anthem wasn't my thing, I never want to see people lose out on potential income or a project like this. BioWare's had a rough go. I know we've been very critical of BioWare, but I want nothing more than a great BioWare RPG to come out, so nothing but the best for them. Actress Jamie Lee Curtis is joining the cast of the upcoming Borderlands film, Lionsgate announced Monday. Curtis will play Tannis, a scientist archaeologist who possibly holds the literal keys to the fabled vault, but her past with the Siren's Lilith may complicate things along the way. Tannis has appeared in every main Borderlands game, but returned most recently as a side character in Borderlands 3 that assists the protagonist. 343 Industries has teased that there just might be a, quote, new place and way to play Halo the Master Chief Collection in the near future. 343 revealed the news in its latest MCC weekly flighting and development update and said that while, quote, things can change, it is trying to offer fans of this Halo collection a new way to play. While many would love to see Halo the Master Chief Collection come to Switch or PS5, this is most likely a hint that we may see it arrive on the Epic Game Store or possibly Xbox's cloud gaming with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate on iOS and PC. Ubisoft has once again announced that Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time has been delayed, this time without a new clear release date, the remake of the Sands of Time game. The developers of the remakes released a statement on Twitter explaining that, quote, we have made the decision to shift the release of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake to a later date. This extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. And finally, unfortunately, sad news coming out of ZeniMax Media, the parent company of developers like Bethesda and id Software. They announced that its founder and CEO, Robert A. Altman, has passed away. Altman was 73. News of Altman's death was published on the official Bethesda Twitter account. Quote, we are deeply saddened to tell you the passing of Robert A. Altman, our founder and CEO. He was a true visionary, friend, and believer in the spirit of people and the power of what they can do, or what they can accomplish together. He was an extraordinary leader and even a better human being. The statement also added that Altman sent out weekly emails to employees during the pandemic and shared one such letter to the public. In it, Altman tells employees to find time for themselves during the pandemic and social distancing. Quote, we know many are feeling the pressure of isolation and the stress related to our current circumstances, Altman wrote. Again, I urge you to make time for yourselves daily, schedule online social gatherings, and keep your perspective, knowing this will pass. So, Mike, with all that said, anything you want to run back in Button Mash before we head into our big topics for this week?
Obviously, Robert A. Altman passing away is a huge deal, especially for Xbox with ZeniMax and Bethesda and everything. And obviously we hope that his family finds solace in this time of difficulty, not only with the pandemic, because I know that's a challenge for pretty much everyone at this point in time, but also, I hope that they're able to come to terms with losing a loved one. But switching gears, I think 343 teasing a new place to play Halo would be a net win for most of everyone, because it's going to give you, it's basically with this game, any amount of exposure is going to be beneficial. Getting this game into different realms or genre, or not even genres, but just different avenues of gaming is going to be severely beneficial for basically I mean, the entire game, just getting more people getting their hands on it, experiencing Halo, falling in love with it is going to be a huge benefit. I like to see, this happening, because if you're going to put Infinite as free to play, it's a good way to potentially gain steam for your game going forward, letting people play the classics. Also, I'd also like to talk about Crash Bandicoot 4 coming forward to the next generations. This is another benefit or positive moving forward, where you're going to see more games coming out going forward to newer generations, saving gamers money. All of that is a net positive, in my opinion, as far as giving people, letting people save money and things of that nature. And then finally, talking about, Telltale re-releasing Borderlands seems kind of like a weird. It almost seems kind of like a strange occurrence that this game's coming back out onto the marketplace. But in all reality, them coming out, re-releasing this game get on the marketplace, which would seem like it would have something to do with renewing licenses. That's probably a net win for the team, because they're always, that was one of the big things with like Telltale Games losing out on basically their entire business by going bankrupt. They lost this. They were going to lose Walking Dead, all that stuff. Obviously, I'm glad to see that they are able to get Gearbox to work with them and re-release this game, because you've played it. I haven't. I'm a huge fan of Telltale games overall. You say that the Borderlands game is good and that you enjoy it, and I believe you. I trust you, and I trust your opinion. So I'm glad to see that they are, getting that game back into the swing of things, because in all reality, you just kind of, with Telltale, I'm selfish because I really want there to be a new Wolf Among Us and I want it to be good. But at the same time, I also have to remember that I don't want to, it's like the discussion we had last week with D2. Like, if you're not going to make a good game, I don't want you to even waste my time with it type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, at least with Telltale now, it's out with the old, in with the new. I mean, they have new ownership, they have new executive leadership who's overseeing their assets right now, the development and whatnot. Your hope in any situation like that is, and I can't remember whenever the whole situation of that, like the whole Telltale situation, the imploding and then resurrection of really the brand of somebody else outside coming in, buying the name brand of Telltale and, taking over, and buying some of those assets as well that they had. They, I can't remember exactly how much experience the new ownership has with game development, but my biggest thing is whenever it comes to people investing in gaming, and we're seeing it, I mean, most recently held this week with, and I didn't really put it on the docket just because it doesn't necessarily completely pertain to Xbox or PC. Stadia is kind of their own thing, but, you look at Google shutting down their own internal studio that they're developing games for Stadia. And they're saying, hey, Stadia is working out great. And we're seeing that right now when it comes to games like Cyberpunk 2077, third-party games that require these high-end rigs and whatnot. We offer the ability for people to play them if they have a, reliable internet connection. We can offer them the chance to play those games at a really high fidelity for a fraction of the cost, and it's working out great right now. But they also realized, hey, we're focusing on that. That's where the money's at, so we're getting the fuck out. So, in a year and a half later, after announcing the start of their, them developing games for Stadia and whatnot, they're already out, and it's because they looked at putting, I can't remember exactly what the quote was. I believe Jason Schreier had done the reporting on it, but that they wanted every game that they make to be of AAA, quad A caliber, and needs to be a blockbuster franchise. It needs to be this and that. And they are starting to realize, and it's almost like you were seeing with, the lead up to Halo 5 and really, the era of 2015 to 2014, 2015 to, up until semi-recently, and knock on wood, we're seeing a change in that with Microsoft, and specifically with 343 and Halo, that you can't just toss money at it and, have people who don't necessarily have the biggest, experience and backlog of knowledge in gaming and game development, more importantly, to make these executive level decisions for these games, that it doesn't, and we kind of saw that with Telltale, that it's like they were just straight up managed poorly. And that's what it starts with the foundation of that. And if you don't have the proper framework to make this stuff successful, I don't want to say gamers, but like those who are invested in this medium are very keen. I mean, we're getting to the point now where it's like, fans of this medium, people who invest in gaming, look at a lot of their developers like their favorite sports teams. Like it's getting to that point now that it's like, you support them, the people behind them, and I know this is a, Xbox centric podcast, but like, God of War was one of my favorite games of this past generation. And I am a huge fan of Cory Barlog, their creative director, and how his outlook and vision on gaming and his creative, drive and his visionary, his vision on what game development and creative, medium should be. And I'm a fan of them. I follow them. I follow him. I've talked to him a few times, things like that. So it's like, it's starting to become like that. People will call out bullshit and they'll be like, no, that's not how this works. No, that's not how it's done. No, we're not going to fund that. We're not going to buy into that. And that's what Telltale had, that it was like their management was so poorly ran financially, let alone, what they were doing with their dev staff, that it was literally a fly-by-night type of thing that, boom, they just fucking went up in flames one day. Like, that it's stuff like that you have to have the right people in there. And my hope is circling this all back around before we head into our, big topics, but like circling that whole tangent back around. I hope that that's what's there with this iteration of Telltale games. I would hope that's why you would see I know they brought a lot of staff back who were let go, who suffered at the poor management decisions that were made. And I highly recommend, if anybody hasn't seen it, which a lot of people, I feel in our community probably have, but No Clip's documentary on the whole Telltale situation, where they're talking to a lot of the developers and marketing staff and whatnot, a lot of people who were associated with Telltale games during that whole situation and leading up to it, listen to that, talk to that. You'll see their outlook. They are, and kind of, we're going to end up talking about it a little bit in one of our big topics, but like, we tend to forget that people make games. Games aren't made by AI. Games aren't made by robots. I mean, not yet, but people make these games, that it's like, you can only hope that the people who are in charge of those people let them have that creative freedom, let them do that, and let them, hone their talents and skills, and, are given the freedom to make something special. And they have the right people in mind to, if they don't know what the fuck they're doing, don't be hands off. Like, at work, if I don't know something about something, I let the people who do know something about it make the decision on that, or I rely on them for information. Like, just because you have the biggest stick in the room doesn't mean you know how to swing it. Like, it doesn't mean you're going to hit a grand slam every time. So like, be willing to sit there and take that first pitch strike. Like, it's okay. So anyways, I totally agree with you, Mike. I feel confident that a new Wolf Among Us will be good. A new Telltale will be good. It's good to see at least, Gearbox obviously having the rights to Borderlands, being their own IP, them in-house, it seems like they're in-house publishing it, which is great. They can at least get it out there and enjoy that, but I'm sure Telltale gets a kick of it, but I digress. Let's kick into our big topics for this week, Mike, because I don't want to run too long in the tooth. I know how valuable everyone's time is. But Mike, it seems like it's like every other week something with Halo Infinite. It is. But our first big topic, man, new Halo project, quote unquote project in development, according to an Xbox job ad. This comes from Hiram Cryer over on Games Radar. As always, link in the description. Go over there, give them a click, and make sure you check out the article that they are reading, because I know I like to pull a lot from some of the articles we have, but I want to make sure that everybody gets clicks and whatnot. But I digress. Let's jump into it. There appears to be a new Halo project in development at Xbox. Over the weekend, Microsoft listed a new producer role in Redmond, Washington at 343 Industries through their website, developer of the Halo franchise after Halo 3. Quote, 343 Industries is looking for a producer to help develop a new project in the Halo universe. The official job listing description reads, hinting at a newcomer working on a new brand, hinting at a newcomer working on a brand new unannounced Halo project, if I could spit it out, being in development at the studio. Due to the wording of the job description, it's incredibly unlikely that the new producer would be hired to work on Halo Infinite, which is nearing the final stretches of development and aiming to release later this year after the Halo Infinite delay last year. It's also extremely unlikely that a brand new producer would be introduced to Halo Infinite so late in development. Just last week, we heard how all launch sandbox related content in Halo Infinite is in the base game and being play tested daily by the development team. This is just the first in a series of planned updates from 343 surrounding the upcoming game, with the developer planning to be more communicative over the coming year by releasing news about the game every month. This would certainly go a long way to alleviating fans' worries after a long period of radio silence from the developer late last year. So, obviously, there isn't much to go off of from the job listing alone, which is normally the case when it comes to like these discoveries that, articles are pulled from and, that can get clicks and whatnot. There's usually not a bunch of substance to go off of with this, but it's nice to see, this additional project at 343 that I've talked about, we've brought up saying, hey, this is a thing, it's been floating around for a while, It's nice to see that's, starting to come up and get people excited. It's not I told you so type of thing, but like, I'm happy to see that people are now starting to, get breadcrumbs towards this project. But a lot of people, jump directly to a new Halo Wars. And that's, completely, I would think, understandable given, the studio size now. They're at, I think it was like 600 plus, something like that. It was crazy. I mean, granted, it's Microsoft. They have Scrooge McDuck money, like we always say. But, and really, too, if I remember correctly, I think it was like November that there were rumors surrounding, hey, there's a new, Halo Wars being in development. That kind of puts kind of fuel to all this. So it's starting to line up a little bit. But a new RTS from a studio that is traditionally centered around FPS, games and having development skill in that specific area. I'm not saying it's transferable, but specifically be developing, an FPS game would be quite a change. Even though 343 did assist with Creative Assembly's development on Halo Wars 2, they just weren't the lead developer on it. But they did, add to that. But Mike, with Halo Infinite, really, from what we're supposedly hearing, set to have this 10-year plan, kind of similar to Destiny when it was first announced. Like, hey, we have this mindset for this game 10 years down the road, mapped out of what we want to do, how we want this game to evolve, yada, yada. What do you want out of other pockets of this franchise, other sects of this franchise, including this new project? Does a new Halo Wars sound appetizing in the current landscape of Microsoft, especially with, their Game Pass model of having this Netflix style, smorgasbord of you being able to pop in? It doesn't have to necessarily be these quad A games 24/7, but having this space that you can release these games and still get active player bases because of the low, bar to entry, So what do you think about that? What do you think, what do you want out of this franchise in other sects than just Halo Infinite?
I think a Halo Wars that is a game that you play more so on like PC, because they're doing a lot of PC PC games right now. I think that is something that would be severely appetizing personally, because you're looking at a game that you could basically actually enjoy micromanaging. Because I know on Xbox with Halo Wars, it was a game that was almost borderline annoying to play because of the fact that you're kind of held hostage to a controller versus actually getting to utilize all of the controls that a keyboard and mouse has.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people are going to think like, oh wow, like Halo Wars was pretty good for a console RTS, and that's true. Like, by all means, like,
I have a lot of fond memories with it.
Yeah, like, I'm not trying to say that the game was bad, but could you imagine like a Halo Wars RTS that you actually get to use mouse and keyboard on?
Yeah,
because of the model of Microsoft's focus kind of going to PC gaming too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me,
which is nice. And to be honest, you know, obviously Halo Wars Definitive Edition and Halo Wars 2 are both available on PC, but nearly did not have gain the traction either of those releases did as the original one did, coming a year after. I believe it was a year after. No, yeah, it was. I think it was no more than 2 years after Halo 3 released, I believe. But on console, like, it had the console version of Halo Wars had that traction that the PC releases of Halo Wars 2 and Halo Wars Definitive Edition, not to mention that the Xbox version of the console version of Halo Wars 2, like, none of those had the traction that first one did.
Right. And to me, like, you can play Age of Empires 2 on Game Pass, like, which is really cool, but playing on a controller, I feel like you're going to be severely, like, you're going to be at a handicap compared to someone with a keyboard and mouse. So I think it'll be really cool to be able to play a game that's, hopefully optimized for PC gaming, because now, you can hook a mouse and keyboard into your Xbox One, and you're going to be able to do that in your Series X and play with a mouse and keyboard. So hopefully a new Halo Wars game with a lot more micromanaging, a lot more macro, because before, like, the mass amount of units you were allowed on the field at one time was like 30, and that's not a whole lot of units on the field. I mean, that's hardware issues preventing you from putting more on there, because I know, like, obviously the Xbox 360 hardware wasn't the best, so that might have been all it could handle. That's all your microing could handle. So I think, like, that alone is a very appealing thing to me, because you see StarCraft still very successful by all intents and purposes with StarCraft 2, with esports, with StarCraft, even Brood War, still very popular in Korea. A lot of people still play it on stateside also. You see Age of Empires 2 having a resurgence.
Adam Marsh was playing StarCraft 2 yesterday.
Yeah, so I mean, you have a lot of people still enjoying the RTS genre, and that's one that was always somewhat successful for the Halo franchise, going to a little bit of a different flavor there. So I'd be extremely curious to see, like, exactly how it worked out if if it was actually optimized for PC and people could play it on there, because I don't know that it would necessarily be like a huge esports scene or anything, but if fucking Age of Empires 2 is still popular esports wise with balance and everything, like, it's 20 years old, man. Like, it's actually growing in popularity again. Like, I don't see why Halo Wars couldn't be something that would be a lot more popular if it got the chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, definitely. And I totally agree that, there's no reason that, an RTS based in Halo can't be, obviously successful. Look, like, if you ask me, like, when I think of, like, we've talked about it before on the show, like, Resident Evil franchise we love. We talk about, can the bandwidth of this franchise support multiple different, avenues and styles of this game, where, that's more of a question to me in terms of, like, the actual minutia of the game, because it's still, all of those are still Resident Evil. Like, you're doing the same thing, just different, hey, we're talking third person behind the shoulder camera, like in RE2 remake and 3 remake. Are we talking the original Resident Evil style fixed camera in the corner, first person with RE7 and now 8? Those are all still, though, the same style of game, a survival horror game. It's just different avenues to get there. And that's, I think, more of a question of, okay, can that work? Because you're trying different, you're coming at coming at the same result in different ways, but are all those, are all those paths the best possible way to get there? Where when we look at something like this, it'd be more, okay, to me, I view anything that's come out with like Halo in terms of, different avenues and whatnot, different genres, it all is used to really, I think, get people interested in the main product. Where if you're looking at, it almost reminds me of, and obviously in a much better way than the example I'm going to give, but when Assassin's Creed, or when the Assassin's Creed movie came out, and Ubisoft wanted to do that, they just straight up said, we don't care how much money it makes, it's a marketing tool for us. We want more people who are interested in the, who aren't new to, or who are new, I should say, to Assassin's Creed, or don't really know anything about Assassin's Creed, but go to see this movie, because they like to go see movies or whatever, and see that, or see a TV spot of it or something like that, and be like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, and then look it up and be like, oh, it's based on a game. Oh, let me see. Oh, that was cool. And even though the movie sucked and it didn't do good, it's still like the numbers behind it in terms of like the impressions and getting word out about that series and getting more people into it were great. It was positive because it just got more people to have the name Assassin's Creed in their wheelhouse and in the zeitgeist again. And that's where I see Xbox and Microsoft in general kind of having like, now that they have some of these brands, and while they still need to build them up still and whatnot, but we're seeing Gears come out and have Gears Tactics. And sure, Gears Tactics reviewed very well, and a game that, to be honest, I want to get into and try, and really haven't had the chance. I actually might install that after we're done. But, having that avenue, that's not their main asset. Their main asset is Gears 5, and the amount of, emphasis they're putting on that, and the amount of support they're putting behind that game, and having a pro league and doing all this stuff. Like, that is their main, that's the prized hen there, if you want to call it. That's what you want, where, everything else is just fodder to get people into this. And like I said, Gears Tactics is great, but there's also like Gears Pop, and that's, people like the people who like mobile games. Oh, cool. I've heard of Gears. Oh, cool. Oh, okay. I'm learning some of these, characters or whatnot, cool. It gets them into, well, I could get Game Pass and I could try this, yada, yada. Like, this to me seems like the perfect fit for Game Pass. Like, to see something like a Halo Wars, or even just an ODST style game that is separate from, Halo Infinite. And I'm not talking, I should say firefight style game, where it's not, you're not necessarily like, which I could see the more realistic. It'd probably be, a part of Halo Infinite proper, but something like that is much more, hey, I have Game Pass, people have Game Pass, cool. Just, it's something to add into there and keep Halo on the brain. Like, okay, in between, it releases in between Halo Infinite's next major, expansion or content update or what have you, that, cool, we released a new Halo project. If you want to buy it, cool, it's on Game Pass if not. But it's more so, hey, if you do this, you're going to get skins for Halo Infinite. You're going to do this and that. And I know some people will think, oh, that's kind of sucks. That kind of is, I don't want to say shitty, but like, it's not going to be given the justification. No, Microsoft has money. And like we said, sometimes money doesn't solve everything, but at least, they're going to provide the opportunity for this game to be good. And it seems like Microsoft is willing, now that they've kind of shifted some assets around within the development team on Halo and just in 343 in general, I feel much more confident about the future of Halo in general than I did a year ago. Now that we've seen the delay, now that we've seen the restructuring, them be much more transparent, vocal, I feel very confident about that. Do I think it's Halo Wars that we see? I think that's the safest bet. But at the same time, if something else came out, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, if it's just, even if it is like, I don't want to say like a Telltale style game or something like that, like, none of that would shock me. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the size of Halo Infinite. I think it's just mostly, hey, we're focusing on this. It's in the Halo universe. We're doing this. I don't think it's outside of the Halo universe or anything like that, unless it's like, hey, this is a side story type of thing that we're working on that's within the universe but has nothing to do with, Master Chief or anything like that. Like so many people have been wanting with, Star Wars to come out now that the Skywalker saga is all wrapped up and whatnot. Now that they can move away from that and they could fucking do something in the, billions of other stories that they could tell that doesn't have to worry about Luke Skywalker. Like something like that where it's in the same universe, but it's, type of thing. I don't know. Something like that. But I feel confident with where this could potentially go. And I always want a new RTS to try out. Like, it seems like RTSs is that genre that I'm always like, man, I want to like invest time into. It's just finding the right one to do so. And I love StarCraft. I love Warcraft. I love Halo. I liked Halo Wars back in the day. I'd like to actually play Halo Wars too. But I really enjoyed the original one on Xbox 360. Like, really had a good time. But then again, I'm like you. If I'm playing an RTS, I want to fucking play it on my PC. So, like, something like that. Now that Game Pass is here, now that I have a, pretty good PC, I'd like to do something like that. So, where I'm playing a lot of, competitive games like that I would want to do it on there, specifically just for the management style that an RTS demands, that, with the amount of, macros that you're going to have and whatnot, that's just not very good on a controller. So I'm with you on that, but
it's almost borderline impossible, to be honest.
Oh, like, I mean, even thinking of like Civ and stuff back in the day on 360, playing what was it, Civ Revolution? Yeah, like playing that, even that was kind of cumbersome. It's like, good game, but it's like just stuff like that it's like I couldn't imagine like me I don't know how me at like 14, 15 years old sat down, let alone me at 28 being like, no, I have the money, I'm going to just buy it on my PC or like get a PC play on that if I really want to. Like, I couldn't imagine doing something like that. Like even too, like I was skeptical when like Diablo was coming back out onto consoles with Diablo 3. I'm like, even then, like, granted, much easier I think to accomplish than that, but like knowing how cumbersome, like remembering, like, granted I didn't play it, but watch somebody play StarCraft on N64 back in the day, and like seeing how Diablo was on like PS1 back in the day, remembering like my cousin having it on, he had it on PC, but he also had it on his PS1, and like playing it on his PS1 and how just fucking bad that was trying to play it. I'm like, I just couldn't remember or I couldn't like imagine trying to play those games, let alone something like, a modern RTS in 2021. Like, no, I couldn't imagine that. So who knows? Maybe it'll be a PC only release type of thing. If that is the case, obviously we don't fucking know if it's Halo Wars or not, but that seems just like the safest bet at this point. But who knows? We'll get to see leading up to it eventually, knock on wood. But Mike, let's head into our next news article for this week. And this one's kind of salt in the wound type of thing. And we're going to get into it. Like I said, this is where I was kind of talking about before, people make games. It's not one person. It's not this and that, but this just sucks. Stolen CD Projekt Red files reportedly now sold after dark web option. This comes from Joe Screbbles over on IGN, as always, link in the description. Files stolen from CD Projekt Red in a ransomware attack revealed earlier this week have reportedly now been sold in a dark web auction. Dark web monitoring organization KELA, which previously provided The Verge with what it believes to be a legitimate file list for CD Projekt Red's engine, reports that an auction set up to sell the files has now been closed after a, quote, satisfying offer was made from outside of the forum it was being held on. That offer reportedly stipulates that the code will not be distributed, if I can spit it out, or sold further. Cybersecurity account VX Underground also reported that it had heard the sale was completed. Speaking to IGN, Victoria Kivelchik, I'm going to go with that, Victoria Kivelchik, a threat intelligence analyst at KELA, explained that it appears that all of the files stolen, which apparently include the source code for Cyberpunk 2077, multiple versions of The Witcher 3, and Gwent, were sold in a single package. It's unclear who the buyer is or what they intend to do with the files at the time of writing. It's also unclear what price the files were sold for, but reports yesterday indicate an upfront purchase price of $7 million. Kvelchik provided IGN with a translated screenshot from the forum dated February 10th, in which the seller said CD Projekt should pay the Blitz upfront purchase fee because of sensitive data contained in the files. Of course, right now we can't verify whether that is true. So, listen, like I said earlier, whether you dig a game or not that someone makes, or a team makes, or studio, lead executive, however you want to, whatever title you want to give, makes an ass out of themselves, like CD Projekt Red has, the past couple months, that doesn't necessarily justify something like this. Like, people, like I say, tend to forget that people make games, and not just AI and robots and this and that. Like, it is actual hardworking human beings who are passionate about this creative outlet and moving this industry forward and creating these groundbreaking experiences. They're the ones who make these games. The actions of 1% shouldn't necessarily speak for the other 99. But then again, this is another bruise for CD Projekt Red and what feels like their fall from grace. So with that said, Mike, why the hell would somebody buy the source code to games that, one, are pretty modder friendly to begin with? We're talking The Witcher 3, which you can easily go on Nexus Mods and get mods for. Cyberpunk 2077, which people are like fixing this game from a mod standpoint. All these games are available on Nexus Mods. They're very user friendly and allow for that for the most part, and kind of like Bethesda games in general. Why would somebody spend a whopping $7 million if they're not going to go and, sell it or, distribute it or anything like that, outside of like cheating in Gwent or something like that? Like, what would drive somebody to spend that much money on source codes for games that are pretty user friendly to be able to access and change and whatnot?
Yeah, I don't really know. When I saw this story first come out, I wasn't necessarily shocked, because I know that there's been a lot of disgust amongst the community about the state of Cyberpunk and just the behavior of CD Projekt since they've gone, as an IPO, as a publicly traded company. I know that there's been a lot of just general frustration, confusion, things of that nature. I saw that, there was a hack, and I was thinking to myself, well, it's kind of weird. Like, what incentive would anyone have to hack them? And then you get $7 million for the source code for these games. It's definitely bizarre. And I think that potentially you could see, I guess, to me, it's really confusing. It's really bizarre. But I guess the thing that I could see being a possibility is the fact that potentially a competitor bought this source code to hurt their standing in the market, to really cripple them. And I know that there's not necessarily a code when it comes to something like this, because it's so unique to hear about this as far as when it comes to game development studios. It's not totally uncommon to hire a competitor. Like, if back in the day, if you would consider Halo and Call of Duty competitors during like Halo 3 MW2 days, they were absolutely competitors. I don't think it would be so weird to hear of Call of Duty hiring someone from Bungie or vice versa, but straight up buying the source code, I don't know that there's necessarily a code for this. And is it something that is frowned upon? That's something that I have no clue on what ground I even stand on, because it's just so bizarre. I would think that this is coming from a studio. It has to be coming from a big entity that has a lot of money, clearly. That's obviously goes without saying because of the price tag that comes with it. I am interested to see what comes of it. Because whenever something like this happens, whenever something as shady as this, because this is a shady deal, source code was stolen, the hard work of people who made this game was stolen, and then it was sold to someone else. So whenever you are an entity that makes this purchase, you have to realize that, like, there's no rules. Like, whoever you bought it from is going to sell you out. Like, what's going to happen if CD Projekt or another entity that a big investor in CD Projekt offers to hand you $5 million to tell you who sold or who you sold it to. Now all of a sudden your profit's $12 million on something like this.
Right.
So like it's really shitty because it could come out being someone like, I don't think Bethesda or ZeniMax would do it, but they had the money to. Like, say a company like that did it. Now all of a sudden, now your public image hurts because you basically reinforce this behavior. Like, that's the only thing that sucks about when it comes to hacking and dark market stuff is like, if you enforce this type of behavior, then it's not going to stop. Yeah. So if nobody offered them the money to buy the source code, if everyone collectively blackballed whoever did it, and there's no market for it, then there's no reason to do it. But the minute that you legitimize it by buying this, now that all of a sudden there's a market for this to happen to more developers.
Yeah.
And now a way of life that is already really like has a black eye, in my opinion, because of all the contract work. That means you don't have to offer benefits. You don't have to offer this. You don't have to offer that. Now all of a sudden, all of your work and all of your hard work for years can just be taken away from you in a week's time and sold to the highest bidder. And now all the work that you've done without benefits, without getting paid fairly, is just gone by the wayside. Like, to me, that's a really bad thing. And I just don't really know. I know how I feel about it. I know I feel really shitty about it because it's a shitty thing. And I just don't know why you would ever incentivize someone to do this type of thing, because that's ultimately what you do whenever you create a market for someone to hack like this.
No, and that's the thing, that it's like, it only hurts those. It really doesn't hurt CD Projekt Red overall in terms of like, oh, The Witcher 3 is out there. It's heralded as one of the best games of all time. And, what people want out of it, like you're saying, you can only imagine it's people who, outside of other devs or people who want access to their engine or something like that, where it's like, they want to be able to, steal the secret sauce or something like that. But, you got to think, like, for a company like CD Projekt Red, there is no way in hell that they don't have multiple backups of these files and encrypted versions of these files so that it just fucking can't be stolen. Period. Like, there's no way. And they even say, the original article that, kind of filled everyone in when this first broke, I believe I was reading the one on IGN about it, that they had a screenshot of it, and it was just like, the hackers even said, now, we understand you probably have backups of these files. It's like, okay, yeah, I get, and sure, like, they may get the, original source code of this or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, this only hurts the people who, work there, not, the brand or whatever. Like, to me, that's not, it only hurts the devs, it only hurts the people, like, associated with it, not, the overall brand even. Like, it's so weird that, like, we're in 2021 where it's like, to me, I think of, like, from a restoration end of, like, when StarCraft's original source code was kind of, I think it was lost at one point, but somebody had found, they had bought it at like a garage sale or some shit like that. But it used to be, at least, how when games of that era were being, finished up and developed and whatnot, they used to have gold discs of them. That's where you get the phrase "gone gold" when we talk about, like, hey, the 1.0 version of this game is finished. It's being shipped out to get, pressed to discs and whatnot, or pressed, but, you get what I'm saying. So it's that, emphasis that these gold discs used to be made. And StarCraft's originally, I believe, if I remember correctly, was lost, but, like, somebody got it at, like, a garage sale or some shit like that and found out what it was. It was the original source code to StarCraft. And, like, that from a preservation end, where it's like, yeah, granted, StarCraft, you can go and it's free to play now and whatnot, but, like, that's stuff from 20 years ago. That's where it's more important to me, where it's history. It's like, yeah, CD Projekt Red, they're a smart group. They know what to do. They know they've been making games for how long, and they are still, no matter how tough this stretch is in terms of the dumbass mistakes they're making, or, stuff that the devs are getting the actual people making these games, not the 1%, you know, the higher ups the people who are actually making this are getting shit on for no reason. Like, you know, the games that they're making now, they're heralded as some of the best games of all time. And granted, they have backups, they have this and that, but what if they don't? Like, what if they start losing those backups? It's like, you only have access to that original source code at some point. And it's like, that's where it does get shitty because, you know, like I said, people make these games. It's just not, you know, oh, some random robot or something isn't designed to make this. It's not, the Boogeyman doesn't make these games or whatever. It's not some fucking, you know, flying spaghetti monster. No, it's like fucking human beings who punch in and, you know, work long fucking hours to make these games. And it's just them dealing with this fucking mess that, just because you didn't fucking like Cyberpunk, cool. I didn't really fucking like Cyberpunk that much. Ended up being on my games of the year, you know, as honorable mentions, like, because a lot of the story elements were good, but I'll be honest, I haven't fucking thought of Cyberpunk since I beat it. But guess what? I'm not going out fucking hiring somebody to try to steal source code to fucking, oh, you got pooned. Like, no, like, fucking grow up. Like, these are people's livelihoods and shit like this. And now they got to fucking deal with that. And guess what? These guys are going to kind of probably get fucked over because they're stupid enough to leave, from what it sounds like, a paper trail to them. From what it sounds like, that it seems like it's going to be pretty easy to catch who did this. Like, like, just, why would you do it? I just don't understand. Like, if you're somebody who is a fan of games, because clearly they are, it wouldn't be fucking Joe Schmo going out there and getting it. It's not like EA or Activision. It wasn't Call of Duty or anything like that. Like, Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red in general are still a semi-niche developer for people who aren't within gaming. Like, it had to be somebody who plays games and whatnot, or is at least familiar with games to go in and get that. So, like, it just fucking frustrates me. Like, I just, there's no point. There's no point. Like, what do you get you get a payout of $7 million. Somebody's dumb enough to do that. Like, these games it's like Bethesda games. They leave the back door open for the most part. You can go in there, you can work on mods. They encourage you to make things out of these games for the most part. I mean, like, most engines now. I mean, look at Unreal Engine. It's fucking next to nothing to get in there and use that product and make stuff. Like, and that's the biggest fucking engine in the world. Most of your favorite games are made in the Unreal Engine. It's like, it's right there. You can go do it. I don't know. It just fucking frustrates. Shit like this frustrates me because people just think it's like, oh, one person made this fucking game. Let's get them. No, it's like there are hundreds of people who made this fucking game, and just because you didn't like it, you want to fucking try to pull one over on them. Like,
yeah, and it's not like,
and it only hurts because guess what? Like, even if the fucking game you don't like it, it's still is a moment in history for games that long term. Guess what? If they fucking lose their backups or something fucking happens and they run out of backups or something, or the cloud. Something happens with their cloud servers and they lose it or something like that. Guess what? It's fucking gone then. They don't have access to that. And maybe it is a game somebody liked and they can't bring back. And guess what? This game is still important to the history of gaming, that it needs to be in the right people's hands. You can, like I said, if you really want to dig around and fucking access it, or you want to go and fucking cheat in Gwent, like, because Gwent was the first one from supposedly that has started to leak online now. That it's like, really? Gwent, the fucking, like, add-on to the game, like the game within the game. That's what the mobile phone game. And I mean, granted, you can play it on PC as well, but like the fucking Hearthstone-esque portion of The Witcher. That's what. I don't know. I'm just Zen. Peace. Zen.
Yeah, it's like you're just going out and you're just trying to, like, I'm a big Mr. Robot fan, and I love that show. And, you know, I might not have necessarily agreed with the tactics or anything of that nature, but they knew the gravity of the situation. And while Elliot was obviously going through his multiple personality issues during the entire show, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Mr. Robot, please go watch it. That's all the more I'll say about that's a spoiler. I just realized I spoiled some of it. But, like, they knew the gravity of the situation.
Right.
This feels like something that was uncalculated. Whenever you make a hack like this, you're almost always going, like, yeah, you might be able to get to the data and in this case steal it, but you're always going to leave a footprint behind
Right.
with something like this. Like, people are always kind of going to find out who or what. So you are literally you're basically just being a dick. And I know that, like, there's a lot of hackers out there that are literally just dicks.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the issue with the hacking community, as far as with like something that comes to mind is like Snowden. Now, obviously,
Right.
I'm not going to get into the politics of all that shit, but like, they're the type of people that have to get hired by the government because it's like, you're the best at what you do because you have a brain and you're just a dick. Like, instead of like actually using your brain for good things, this is what you do with it.
Mhm.
Like, you are clearly very intelligent. You're very good at You're very good at hacking. You could do a lot of good with this, but instead you are just going to steal the files and just ruin people's lives, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. You're going to drive the stock down for CD Projekt Red, which is going to cost. It's not going to cost the millionaires. They're not the ones that are going to feel this. Like, yeah, are they going to feel it? Sure, they're going to feel it in their pocket when the stock goes down, but it's the people that are going to lose their jobs because the stock goes down, because now there's going to be less money to go around, and like, it's going to be everyday people that you're going to cost. And it's like, all just to prove a point. Like, if you don't do your job good enough, we're going to take it from you. Like, I'm by all means, like, I'm all about holding people accountable, but do it with your fucking wallet. Like, the biggest problem with CD Projekt Red and it was that people saw how bad it was, but they still bought it. Like, you still bought the game. If you're mad about buying the game, that's your bad.
Right.
I have long paid the price for buying shitty games without doing my due diligence of research, and I have made sure that I won't make the same mistakes again. The only game that I willingly throw away $60 at every year is fucking NHL. And it's because it's the only place I can get it. It's my favorite sport. I love hockey. It's my favorite sport to play the game. So I willingly hand over $60 knowing that EA is just betting me over every time I do it. But like, with CD Projekt Red, with Cyberpunk, all the pre-release games and everything, you saw how bad it was, and you still bought it. Like, that's your bad.
Right.
Start making the companies pay by not buying their shit.
Right.
Stop buying the games.
Yep.
That's the only way you're going to send your message across these people. Hacking their codes and everything isn't going to do anything. They're still going to make shitty games going forward. They're just going to make it harder for you to hack. They're going to be less forthcoming with the mods. Like, I guess one thing that they could have done is just release the source code and been like, well, here it is. Like, if you want to do anything with our games, here you go, which is probably what's going to wind up happening. Like, exactly what Bethesda does with their games. Like, if you want to mod it, that's great. Here you go. Have fun with it. We're not going to let you extort us for money. You know what I mean?
Right. No, definitely. And that's like, like you were saying too, most of the time these hackers, these people who are, doing this, they end up leaving a footprint. And that's the thing that, like, it sounds like they're going to get caught. And like,
Absolutely.
That's the thing that, it's the age-old statement, and it's kind of boomerish, but it's very much true. Like, it really is true that the internet is not written in pencil. It is written in pen, and it's written in ink. That you can erase it, you could try to, but it's still there. There's still the marking there, and it's you can't get rid of it. So, anyways, Mike, after all of that, let's move on to our last one before we get any more pissed off. Microsoft creates a new subsidiary. I am struggling to get like some of these basic words out. Microsoft creates a new subsidiary called Vault to merge with Fallout maker ZeniMax Media. This comes from Wesley Yinpool over on Eurogamer. I'm doing it again. Over on Eurogamer. As always, link in the description. Microsoft has created a new subsidiary called Vault to merge with ZeniMax as part of its proposed takeover of the company. A document posted on the European Commission's website reveals Microsoft plans to secure approval for its $7.5 billion acquisition of ZeniMax. Quote, the concentration is accompanied by way of a merger, pursuit to which a newly created Microsoft subsidiary, quote, Vault, will be merged with and into ZeniMax. The use of the name Vault for the subsidiary is surely a nod to Bethesda's Fallout series, which contains a raft of vaults meant to protect people from nuclear destruction. Spoilers, those vaults aren't always what they appear to be. Of course, Microsoft would retain sole control of the whole of ZeniMax, which also makes and publishes the likes of Elder Scrolls and Doom. The creation of subsidiaries to house-bought companies is a common tactic in the corporate world. In fact, EA has recently done that, the same thing, creating a subsidiary called Codex Games Limited that will become the owner of Codemasters once that deal has finally gone through. The Commission's antitrust regulators have invited interested third parties to submit their observation on Microsoft's ZeniMax deal to the Commission by the 15th of February this year. The EU will make a decision by the 5th of March. It sounds like this one will likely go through, though. Quote, on preliminary examination, the Commission finds that the notified transaction could fall within the scope of the merger regulations, reads the note. However, the final decision on this point is reserved. So, like Wesley mentioned in the article, a move like this isn't uncommon to be seen in, regards to acquisitions, even in gaming, citing EA's purchase of Codemasters. But, what could this mean, I guess, on a larger scale for Bethesda exclusivity discussions in, what it could mean, I guess I should be saying, but what could this mean on a larger scale for Bethesda's exclusivity discussions is pretty interesting to say the least. Could this creation of the subsidiary lend credence to the thought that Fallout could specifically be a Microsoft exclusive in the future, or even, Elder Scrolls for that matter, or I think people might, potentially reading into this a little too much. What do you think about all this?
I see a subsidiary like Vault being created, and I mean the name is pretty insidious, right? Like the name pretty much speaks volumes for itself, right?
Right.
I would say that this deal in particular wouldn't necessarily mean that they are looking to. I don't necessarily buy into the opinion or the thought process that this means that they're going to make Fallout exclusive. What I am buying into is the fact that they are going to begin trying to split up. They might be attempting to split up the team a little bit as to whose niche is it to make Fallout and whose niche is it to make Oblivion or Elder Scrolls games, because let's face it, as Microsoft is looking for first party exclusives, like there needs to be a ramp up. And if one of their agreements with ZeniMax is that they can't make Fallout or Elder Scrolls or one or the other exclusive, then absolutely I could see Fallout being exclusive. But this to me means like maybe they're looking to pick up the pace with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout drops. Maybe Microsoft is looking at them like, okay, we won't make your games exclusive, but you got to come out with fucking Elder Scrolls games more than every fucking 11 years, dude. Like, right. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you can't just keep remaking, you just can't keep remaking Skyrim and expect that to cut it. Like, it's just not going to do it, dude. Like, if you're going to be a part of us, which you are now, we bought you, like, you have to come out with Elder Scrolls games faster than you have been coming out with. We need more cash flow. We need you to do more. And if that's the case, like, by all means, that's perfect. Like, if they separate it a little bit, make the team Vault, make this Vault team, and then they might also make a new subsidiary that has a name to do with Elder Scrolls. And it's like, then they can kind of flesh out a little bit of the teams to decide like who's going to work on what. But there's always, like, if they don't separate the teams from like Maryland, then like, because there's already the team in Austin, like if they kind of are allowed to work in the same area still, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be cross-pollination. It just means that your main goal is going to be to work on this game, but when we need to tap on you, you're still going to be there, because there's no like disguising the fact that there's genius with the quest lines with these games, both Fallout and Elder Scrolls. And then they're similar in certain ways, but they're different in other ways. And you can tell that each game has its own footprint. And if you flesh out the teams, like it does concern me, because it means that Elder Scrolls could lose a little bit of Fallout taste and vice versa. But I still think that like if they're all still making it in Rockville, Maryland, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're going to be on a different floor of the building, how hard is it to press the elevator button and go up? Or like all Americans and human beings, one of my biggest things is like, if you're not going 10 floors, use the stairs. It's just an easy way to get a couple steps in. It gets your heart flowing, can get your brain flowing, yada, yada. I park as far away from the store. Like, I'm still overweight, but I park as far away from the store as I can because A, I don't have to deal with as many idiots. B, I don't have to hopefully deal with people running their shit into my car. And C, I get a little bit more exercise. Like, if you're only a floor away, who gives a shit if you're working on a different game a majority of the time? If they come by and say, hey, man, we have this quest line, but you know who it needs? Like, let's say you're working at Rockville, but you're on Team Vault, and I'm working on the Elder Scrolls game, and I'm the head creative director. And I come down there, and I'm like, you know what we're really missing is we're missing Travis White's handprint on this. You've done a great job in the past. We really need some help with some ideas. Can you help us? Like, that's still perfectly plausible. And until they separate these teams, if they send Vault to Siberia, then I'll be worried. But as of now, this doesn't concern me all that much. It just means that I think that they're going to try to break up the team a little bit, because one whole team of Bethesda is concerning because they've already been outsourcing Fallout games as it is. So maybe that this Vault maneuver also, as like kind of like a flyaway note, maybe this Vault move means that they are going to potentially try to separate and make a run at taking the team that made Fallout New Vegas, and they just made Outer Worlds, not Outer Wilds. Like, maybe they're going to try to pick up Obsidian and put them in the Vault, in their Vault team. Like, that's something that's a next logical step and makes sense. And then is when you start to think of, like, Obsidian's going to be an IP. Like, that's what's going to end up happening to them. And I'm sorry, but, like, you're going to get Fallout. You might get Fallout. You're probably going to get Elder Scrolls on PS4, but you're not going to get Obsidian's game. Then I'm sorry about it. Like, it is what it is. We don't get we've had this discussion many a times. We don't get enough of PlayStation's beautiful games. You know, that's one that they can wait on or hold out from getting. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And I think this has less to do with, you know, exclusivity and stuff like that. But I think it provides the skeleton for attempts to kind of not condense, but like, Microsoft seems to like specific studios covering specific things. Like, when you look, they created 343 Industries to do Halo. They created the Coalition to do Gears. So, like, they kind of, you know, like to have those ducks in a line and kind of, I don't want to say confinements to there, but like have these specific kind of entities to house specific franchises. And not that Bethesda wouldn't have that to begin with coming in there, but Bethesda in general is a pretty broad gaming entity. Like, when they come in, you're bringing in, like, I mean, before it was ZeniMax. ZeniMax oversaw Bethesda, but Bethesda was a much more prominent name in gaming than ZeniMax, even though ZeniMax oversaw Bethesda. But when you bring it into Microsoft, that's when you get, okay, well, it's Microsoft, then ZeniMax, then Bethesda. It does feel like there needs to be a little more shuffling around, like where we may see ZeniMax, the name ZeniMax, kind of disappear. We may see, you know, Bethesda and more, you know, hey, they're going to fall in Vault, where you see, you know, Bethesda Game Studios, Maryland and Rockville and Austin and whatnot. That may just become, you know, Vault, or hey, one of those teams just may become Vault in general. That may be hey, this is the primary Fallout studio. Hey, this, you know, the Rockville studio is the primary Elder Scrolls studio, or something like that. Who knows? But I feel like because of Bethesda being so fucking big as they are, and ZeniMax in general so big as they are, coming into an already humongous entity in Microsoft, there might need to be some, you know, just organizational logistical formatting to make it all fit properly and logistically and, you know, synergy and all that bullshit, you know. So I could see something like that more than exclusivity. I think this more is just getting more ducks in a row, and, you know, it could be as simple as the legality of it and having a place to just house this acquisition already to come in and pop it in perfectly. But who knows? I think it's more on that end. But at the same time, too, the fact that they're naming it Vault could also indicate, like, hey, you know, cool. Elder Scrolls is a much bigger franchise than Fallout in terms of, you know, historically and long-term, and what people, I think, are, you know, long-term going to remember Bethesda for. But that may be, hey, we're keeping that third party. Hey, we're going to let that go, you know, outside of its parameters. Or outside of just the Xbox parameters, and we're going to have it on Nintendo Switch. We're going to have it on PlayStation. We're going to do all that. You know, where Fallout may be, hey, this is where you can get Fallout at. Xbox platforms or Xbox ecosystem is where to play Fallout. And, you know, that may be an indication to that. I have no idea. At this point, I've given up on trying to dissect what the fuck's going on with all of that, because there's 1 week, yeah, it's definitely happened. The next week, no. We never said that. Okay, whatever. So I'm just until we get that fucking official statement from Phil Spencer, or we get across our desk the PR blast or something like that. I am not saying anything. I'm saying it until it happens. It is what it is. I have no idea. So, who the hell knows? I think, like I said, I think it's more logistical, and, you know, just to maybe tighten up,
like housekeeping. Yeah.
Right, housekeeping. Perfect. Yes, exactly. Something like that kind of streamlines a lot of things, because there's so many various entities with, you know, ZeniMax alone coming in. It just would make a lot of sense, on my end at least. But I digress. Mike, send the party chat for this week before we wrap up the show. If you're new to the show, party chat is where we propose one question at the end of the show each week that we want to just discuss with you, the audience. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat within a game? What have you been playing during the fucking shit show of a pandemic that we've been in forever that sucks? Or could be a little more in depth as to why the negative stigma in gaming still exists. And after answering that question ourselves, we'll kick it over to you. Tweet your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, and we'll read some of the responses the following week. You could also email us as well. Our email's over on our Twitter as well. But last week's question: will Microsoft add another studio to their portfolio, whether by acquisition or internally, in 2021? And Aaron T wrote over to us saying, yes, definitely possible, but I could also just see timed exclusive deals when it comes to certain game pillars like Sega, which Sega's always been one of those, like, it's always rumored, oh, that's the next big one that Microsoft's going to buy. They're going to just buy Sega. And that's such a big buy, but at the same time, they just bought fucking Bethesda, so who the hell knows? But I could definitely see maybe going down that road where, hey, all Sega releases coming out within the next year that Sega's technically publishing are timed exclusives with Microsoft. But who knows? This week's question, though, Mike, how many new, and we're talking non-released games yet that weren't already released, yada yada, not including them, brand new games within the Microsoft ecosystem, how many are going to be exclusive this year? We're talking Xbox and PC titles. Do you think they'll be released by 2021? New Microsoft exclusives on Xbox and PC. How many do you think will be released by the end of 2021?
This since 2020 was such a dud and they just released a console, and I know Halo Infinite, like, believe me, I have been one who has said Halo Infinite's going to get delayed. It's going to get delayed. I don't think there's any way that Halo Infinite can be delayed past 2021. So that's going to be one that certainly makes it out.
Right.
You would think. If Starfield's actually closer to done in the oven and they wind up making that exclusive, which we've talked about could be a possibility, that's at least two. And then you got to count, like, all the other games, like the Perfect Dark game that's just been so, everything's been so hush hush at Microsoft. It's really hard to really take a stab at this. But I would say, like, based on the dud that happened with the release of the Series X, I could see like 7 games come out this year. 7 even might feel a little bit light. I would say 8 would probably be a safe bet. I like even numbers more than odd. So I'll say 8. 8 games I could definitely see coming out. But again, like that even feels light. It could be way more, but I'm going to stick with 8.
Yeah.
At this point.
And you bringing up Starfield is actually really interesting because I've heard from a few places that internally 2021's the year. Who knows though? That could also change, but it sounds like from a Microsoft end, they are planning on that. And I believe the Xbox 2 podcast brought that up last week, something like that. I saw that floating around as well, something they heard as well. But who knows? Who the hell knows, obviously. But more stuff has begun leaking with Starfield. We've seen more screenshots and different things like that. So as more smoke comes, that means there's a fire closer. So who knows? It eventually has to come out. We haven't heard anything for 3 years now almost about Starfield, and Bethesda is notorious for not talking about their games until they're like 6 months out, or like revealing them officially at all in general. So them talking about Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 a couple years ago at E3 was like, that is a outlier. So, it wouldn't shock me if this year is the year, hey, we find out about Starfield, hey, it's coming out this year. I think that would be a good push for Xbox this holiday. I'm kind of in the same boat when it comes down to there's stuff we obviously don't know about yet. Where does Hellblade land? Or Hellblade 2, I should say. Where's that land? Is that a 2021 game? Is that a 2022 game? I tend to think, depending on the scope of this game, is that's going to be a 2021 game, because the first Hellblade game wasn't that long of a game. Granted, it that shouldn't matter necessarily because it is a very graphically intensive game, and it's also made by a small, like, Ninja Theory is a small studio, so it's, not completely, they don't have the 343 type of bandwidth within their studio to necessarily do that. Plus, they're working on 3 different projects already alone. So, that's a lot of undertaking, let alone, I'm sure small maintenance to, Bleeding Edge or whatever, even though they said they're not going to support it with content. But, so it's, you think about that, you think about the stuff we don't know about yet that I'm sure, here in a couple months, we're going to be hearing from Phil Spencer again, talking about an Xbox game showcase. It's going to happen. We're going to learn more about games. They have stuff in the oven they don't want to talk about. Obviously, Perfect Dark isn't anywhere close. I would think that's probably got a couple years down the road still. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm going to say 5 in terms of like AAA exclusives with indies. You know what? What did you say, Mike? 8? 7?
Yeah.
You said 8? I'm going to go
8.
Okay, I'm going to go 7. I'm going to go 7. That's including indies as well. I think 12 Minutes also falls into that. The indie game that has Daisy Ridley and Willem Dafoe in it, that I'm really excited about. I'm really fucking excited to play that game because that has been in development for so long. So I'm excited to play that. But I want to say 7. I'm going to say 7 that includes some indies in there as well. But Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you? Talk about all the things we talked about, whether it's the new mysterious project from 343 in the Halo universe, supposedly, whether it's CD Projekt Red and how shitty hackers can be at times, or any of the stuff we talked about. Where can people find you on the interwebs to talk about all of the nerdy news that we did today?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, but the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including at Travelus on Twitter. That's Travis _ TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you ever want to play some video games with me, you can do so over on Xbox Live at just regular Travelus. That's TRAVLESS, no underscore. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So Be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. And with that being said, Mike, that's going to be it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.